Welcome to the podcast. We do recover with Jared Miller, your host.
And I'm Dr. Terry Sellers, your co-host.
This is a podcast about recovery from addiction.
We want to talk about what successful recovery can look like.
Brought to you by High Desert Counseling, Rise Up Supplements, and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn.
Episode 126. Episode 126 is underway. This podcast was recorded in sunny St. George, Utah. I say that because today, on my drive here, I literally passed a lady that was outside waiting for the public transportation system, aka the bus, that had, I'm not even joking you, a beach-size umbrella, not a drop of rain in sight. It is a broiling 111 degrees today here in southern Utah.
See, what you had to say is, you say it was, what do you say again? Sunny St. George?
Sunny St. George.
Sunny as the surface of the sun, St. George.
That's
Scorching St. George.
Yes.
My phone actually says 112 right now.
Yeah, incredible.
It's hot. Holy crap, it's hot. We pulled up together to the studio about the same time, and I got out of my car. I was going to wait for you, but it was in the sun, and I'm like, no, I'm going over to the shade. It's too hot out here.
Beeline it for the shade. Yep. I was actually a little envious of the lady's umbrella. It was just funny to me. You know what I mean? Like you think of umbrella, you think of rain, and she's got this beach-size umbrella to cover her. You know, she's just camped out waiting for the bus. Keep doing it, sister. Good for you.
Yep.
All right, on today's episode, we are going to talk about relapse warning signs, but I also think, like, it's been a minute since I've had the doc here in studio with me, and like I talked about on Paco's episode, the doc almost died on us or something, so I'm waiting to kind of get that story. He was, like, MIA for, like a month for sure, so we're going to find out today all of his medical history, if it was COVID-19, if it was sexually transmitted disease, or I don't know, we might...
It's me being a baby, probably.
A little heat stroke from the 100-degree heat.
It might have been that, too.
All right, before that, though, let's jump into episode 126 is brought to us by Rise Up Supplements. Rise Up Supplements is a nootropic line aimed at optimizing brain function and supporting mental health. They have two powerful blends. The first one is Mind Shift, helps increase focus and optimize brain function. The second is Mindful Mood, helps decrease anxiety and enhance mood. Check out their website at riseupsups.com. That's RISEUPS.com. At checkout, punch in podcast 20 to save yourself 20% off your entire purchase today. We appreciate them sponsoring this podcast. I myself might be on some Mind Shift today. Rock and roll. I'm feeling good, man.
I was about to tell you, Mind Shift is my favorite. I don't really have a lot of anxiety in my life, and my mood's usually okay. But Mind Shift, I think, is really helpful for me. So
yeah, it's like,
and I'm out, so I'm going to have to get some Mind Shift.
What people don't understand, I think, is they're used to the regular supplement stuff. You know, like the bodybuilder type supplements, sports workouts. This is supplements for the noodle, right?
Yeah.
So it's a nootropic, which is basically the building blocks.
Which noodle?
I buy those ones from Canada.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. For your brain. These are supplements for your brain.
Oh!
That noodle. So that it helps with memory recall. It helps, with verbal acuity. Helps you get tasks done. It's really good stuff. It basically helps increase blood to the brain, which, blood brings nutrients. It's the amino acid, the building blocks for the neurotransmitters. So I don't know if it makes you smarter, but it makes you think you're smarter and you feel better.
Well, the thing is, we're definitely finding out now through more modern research. We used to think the brain couldn't really change much. Like it was this neuroplasticity, that term that's being thrown around a lot. It's kind of a new term. Like this was not a term 20 years ago. Right, and we used to think you couldn't change the brain at all, but we're now seeing that given the right building blocks and the right milieu in the brain, that the brain is capable of changing and healing itself. And I think these are particularly helpful things in people in early recovery where they've depleted a bunch of their neurotransmitters from drug use or alcohol use, and I think it helps the brain heal a little bit quicker. So
I concur. I don't know about you, Doc, but I did a lot of drugs back in my day, and I'm firing on about 2 brain cells, and I want those 2 brain cells to be real efficient. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Real efficient.
I got one, and the other, but the other one, here's a really technical doctor term. I apologize. I got one nerve cell and one spirochete, and every once in a while they touch each other, and a thought comes to my head, and I think I'm a spirochete. By the way, is comes from syphilis.
Oh,
Yeah.
hey.
It's the syphilis. It's the brain's reaction to syphilis, basically.
Got you.
Yeah.
Got it. And now we know why you were sick.
Exactly.
This is just going to be, listen, we're going to get to halt. Today, we're going to have some fun with relapse warning signs. The whole point of this podcast is to spread a message of hope, also to spread some education, increase awareness. We have the 24th of July coming up. For those of you outside of Utah, you're like, cool, the 24th, Monday. Woohoo, big whoopty. What is it? Well, here in Utah,
It's big.
we have what we call Pioneer Day.
Yep. It's big.
Some people refer to as Pioneer Day, which is why we're talking about relapse warning signs today, right? Like,
Absolutely.
you know, any of those holidays. And so I actually earlier this week in group, one of the clients said, "What is Pioneer Day?" And I said, "It's basically the Kroger brand of the 4th of July." Right? Like it's the Walmart version or the Smith's version of the main product, which is the 4th of July, aka Pioneer Day on the 24th here in Utah.
Well, we have Pioneer Day. Nevada has Nevada Day. Other states celebrate when they were founded. So, calling us the Kroger, I mean, half the state doesn't even know what
Hold
Kroger
on.
is.
I meant like the 24th. It just feels to me like
I'm proud of them for knowing what Kroger is, frankly.
it feels like I'm caught in a deja vu of the 4th of July. You know what I mean? Like, because it's the barbecue and the pool and the fireworks. And so it's like the 4th of July all over again.
it's
just
like
20 days
1/50th
later.
of the 4th of July.
Is it? Okay.
Come on.
Have you
Get
ever
it?
noticed-
Come on, get it?
It's not.
What-
I get it.
Okay,
Got ya.
thank you.
I got it.
Have you ever
Thanks.
noticed
That was good, by the way.
Our guy Sean loves to correct me.
Somebody
No,
failed geometry.
That'd be me.
Sean's got a very interesting sense of humor.
Yes.
You gotta be right on top of it to figure Sean's stuff out sometimes.
Yes.
I don't think that's bad. That's a good thing.
Follow him
it's
on
very
Facebook,
clever.
Sean
Yeah.
Denovan.
Yeah,
You're-
he's got some stuff.
I would like to think you're going to get 500,000 followers, but there's probably like 2
7.
people
You'll
listening.
get 7 new guys, maybe.
All right. Go ahead, Sean.
Nothing.
Let's
Okay.
catch up. It's been a minute since we've all been together. We typically do new and goods. We're
Yeah.
going to scrap the new and goods because today I just want to a lot's happened since we've been sitting in studio together.
Sure.
What's been going on in your life, Doc?
Well, I was sick, and when I'm not. Doctors are notoriously not very good patients, and I'm probably at the far end of that spectrum. I'm a terrible patient, first of all, for several reasons, and one is I don't listen to other people very well. I don't listen to other people's advice all that well. I need to work on that, but
That's a shocker to me, Doc.
yeah, I know. No one's shocked by that, but so it was weird because I had a bunch of people reach out and ask, what's going on, how you doing, and I just for a long time, like almost 2 weeks, I just was not even in a place where I could answer texts. I just didn't feel good enough to pick up my phone, and so I ignored a bunch of people. Plus, I didn't have the energy. Like I honestly for maybe a week straight, I didn't get out of my bed except to go to the bathroom, and I didn't eat any solid food. And I just was so depleted. I just didn't have the energy to answer anybody. And a lot of people are, getting bugged by that. And I'm like, please, man, I'm dying here.
Yeah.
So it was weird because when I tell you what it is, it's just not, it sounds like, that's no big deal, except it was a big deal to me. So,
You know how I knew it was a big deal? Of course, you know me. I love to tease you, right? Like
Yeah, sure.
our relationship wouldn't be what it is if I didn't think it was just hilarious to give you a hard time. So,
Sure.
so I'm like, giving you a bad time, sending you some sarcastic texts and stuff. So when you say people get upset, I probably personalized that. That was me for sure. I didn't realize how serious it was until I call. Of course, when I don't get a response from you, I'm like, what's going on? So I call Melody, your wife, and she's like, and I'm like, what's going on? Is Doc dying? Ha, in my sarcastic tone. And she's like, he's actually super sick. And that's when it hit me like, okay, this is serious.
Well, okay, so here's what happened. I get migraine headaches. I've had them most of my life. In fact, my mom tells me I had them when I was a child. I don't really remember those, but I've had migraine headaches for years. It's frankly a giant part of the reason why I got addicted to morphine. I was using that for migraine headache relief, which it works for a minute. But anyway, I had this. I went to work on a Wednesday down in Richfield, and a whole bunch of events happened that day, and I didn't wind up getting home until 2:30 in the morning. And I was riled up from some of the events at work. I didn't get to bed till 3:30 in the morning. And then I had a golf tournament the next day, which I had to get up at 6:30. So I got 3 hours of sleep that night. And sleep and headaches are really tied together for me. If I don't get good sleep, I get more headaches than if I do get good sleep. So I get up at 6:30. I go out and play this golf tournament. It was a really hot day. It wasn't hot compared to St. George, but it was, it was the high 90s. And golf tournaments typically, a round of golf is about 4 hours, but a golf tournament can be 6 or 7 pretty easily. So I'm out in the sun all day after sleeping for 3 hours. I think I got dehydrated. I get home that night after the tournament and after doing some work, and I just had a migraine that was just terrible. And so I went to bed and woke up the next day. My migraine was worse, and it got so bad I started throwing up. Well, I think I was dehydrated from the day before, and now I start throwing up. I can't even keep any food down. I can't keep water down. And so I got more and more dehydrated. And literally on the 5th night, and this is true, and it's over, so no one needs to call the psych ward and get me admitted, but literally on the 5th night of having pain in my head, really bad pain in my head for 5 consecutive days, which I've never had in my life. I've had 2-day migraines, but I've never had one last longer than that. This thing had gone on for 5 days, and the 5th night, I literally asked God if I could kill myself. And I think I was serious, 'cause I couldn't take pain in my head any longer. Now, of course, God's answer. It wasn't yes, and it wasn't no. It was weird because I got this impression at 3 in the morning to go take some Excedrin, which I had taken Imitrex, which is a way better migraine medicine than Excedrin is. And 3 o'clock in the morning is not a great time for Excedrin. It's got caffeine in it.
Right.
So anyway, I got this impression to take Excedrin. I went and I took 3 Excedrin. I laid back down. About an hour later, the pain in my head eased enough that I fell asleep. And I woke up the next day, and the headache was, it wasn't gone, but it wasn't.
It's manageable.
It wasn't 8 or 9 out of 10. It was more like 2 or 3 out of 10. And it got better from there. I wound up. I work for a company that does home health. And I had one of the nurses come over and give me an IV. I got 2 IVs. I got one day, and they put 2 liters of fluids into me. And then the next day they came and did the same thing, 2 more liters of fluids. I got 4 liters of fluids in 2 days, and just gradually started to get better. But, man, it took me a solid maybe 2 weeks before I left the house. Before I got out of my bed a little bit after day 7 or 8, but I didn't leave the house until about day 13 or 14, I think.
I'm just glad I'm glad to have you back. I'm glad to hear your voice in the headphones. I'm glad to have you on the podcast, man. I'm glad that also, speaking of our topic today, relapse warning signs, and how you shared, this is how you developed an opiate addiction, right? Is through migraines. Right. I remember when you came on, it was episode 1, and you shared your story.
Right.
At that time, was that, I think physical pain is an absolute.
Physical pain is absolutely a critical thing particularly for people who use opiates, but even alcohol and benzos and anything that'll put you to sleep. But physical pain's a giant trigger. It's not one of the common things. It's commonly talked about, but it's not like when we talk about HALT or we talk about those sorts of things. That's not always mentioned, but that's a high-risk time. Yeah. When you have actual physical pain. Now, emotional pain is a high risk also, but physical pain is, for me, a giant trigger. When I have migraines, that's when my brain goes to, hey, a little morphine would be great right now.
Yeah, it's a great one.
So
way to roll right into our topic
Here
today.
we go. Yeah. What's no good in your world, though, before we roll in? We don't have...
To catch up, so me and Mandy hit our 2-year anniversary on the 14th.
Baby.
Yeah, she's put up with my crap for more than 2 years, dude. Is that crazy or what?
That means she's crazy. That means.
Yeah.
But a good crazy, so that's good.
Diagnosably, for sure, right?
For sure.
She's man, I'm lucky. So we went out to California, San Diego more specifically. We spent some time in Mission Bay.
Yeah, it's
we spent
beautiful.
some time out there in Coronado. The hotel out there was amazing,
Did you
man.
did you go to the Hotel del Coronado?
Yeah,
that's a cool place.
It's built like for anyway. I'm going to stay on topic here, but so
Don't
we
stay on topic.
celebrated. It was built forever ago.
Yeah.
And Hilton came in and bought the property.
Okay.
And they kept it to its original form. So you walk into Hotel del Coronado, and it's like stepping back in time, man. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like the wallpaper, the old pictures, like man, it was cool. It was super cool. So it was fun. And then I got to share this just because on our honeymoon, I'll make it quick. On our honeymoon, me and Mandy rented some e-bikes, right? And we cruised around. You know, when we first were married, we didn't have a ton of money, right? And so we just went to Park City, just somewhere locally.
Yeah.
We rented some e-bikes and we're cruising around, just, you know, doing the shop thing. And I did this little video of it. And so so we're out here in in Coronado, California. We rent some beach cruisers, and she tries recreating the same like little video, right? Saying the same thing I said to her. Only she's on a men's beach cruiser, and it's way too big for her, and she's trying to film and ride at the same time. She ends up wobbling, and it's all caught on camera. It's funny. It's on social media. She drives through a bush, almost hits a fence, ends up halfway on some dude's lawn, and the whole time she's screaming, "Jared, help, help, help!" And I'm like 10 feet in front of her, like, "What do you want me to do?" You know what I mean? Oh, it was so much fun.
Well, there you go. Way to embarrass your wife on our podcast.
Yeah, she's
Lovely.
a cutie. Yeah. All right, relapse warning signs. Should we get to it?
Sure. Let's talk about it.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it. Relapse warning signs. So, man, I know that there's some stuff out there, like you talked about HALT.
Yeah.
There's some stuff that we both have done a little bit of research on. There's an assignment that I brought specifically that's a relapse prevention assignment. Where do we want to start? Do we want to start with HALT? Do we want to start with the Hazelton?
I think we can start with HALT because one of the articles I read coming in, and most of this stuff, like, we all kind of know. To see it written down is helpful, but we all kind of know most of this stuff. But a lot of the stuff, so I read this article published by Hazelton about 37 warning signs of relapse of impending relapse, and then Gabor Mate's got a bunch of stuff on relapse prevention, and so I was going through a bunch of that stuff. But the truth is, of the 37, 25 of them fit into HALT pretty easily.
Yeah.
So why don't we start with HALT?
So HALT, it's all kind of boiled down, right?
Yeah.
You can boil those down to, okay, so my HALT is a little different.
Yeah, you got extra letters.
I got an extra H.
Yeah.
But let's start at the very top.
Double H. HALT.
Yeah,
HALT.
it's like a German or
German
Russian.
HALT, yeah. HALT.
There's an extra H in there, and I'll explain why. And I think it's important. I think it's valid. But let's start. The traditional H in HALT stands for
hungry.
Hungry. Yes.
Yeah. I'm starving right now.
A relapse warning sign is absolutely hunger, which a lot of people may or may not know or think of. Why would it be, Doc? Explain to me in the brain, right? Like let's geek out for a sec. Why is it that hungry would put somebody at risk for relapse?
Yeah, so when I think about that, right, I don't think about, I'm a little bit hungry. I ate breakfast and it's almost lunchtime. I'm a little bit hungry. That's not what I'm talking about. Or that's not what I think about. I think about hungry being a sign of sort of either too chaotic of a lifestyle or not enough self-care, where you just don't have enough time to eat, and so you're skipping meals occasionally and postponing eating for hours and those sorts of things. The fact that you might get a little hungry as lunch approaches is not really what that's talking about to me. I think it's talking about more lack of proper self-care and lack of proper nutrition, frankly. So, yeah, I think it's a little different than just being kind of your normal, I'm a little bit hungry right now.
Not your typical low blood sugar. Not like, hey, on the daily when life's all cool, I'm just a little bit, I could use a protein shake or a banana, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good point. Also, one of the assessments that I do for depression specifically, one of the questions is irregular appetite, either overly hungry or no appetite at all, right? Which ties into what you're saying. We're talking about the type of hunger that is caused by emotional distress.
Yeah, for sure. And so, and I think that, first of all, the brain, we just talked about this when we talked about the supplements earlier. The brain needs certain things to function properly. It actually needs sugar in the form of, in any form, frankly, but in the form of complex carbohydrates is the best way to do it. But the brain needs some of that to function properly. It's interesting, though, that there's a lot of people that may not know this, but the brain is the one organ in the human body that can survive even if there's very little sugar in your bloodstream. It can survive on fat, which it can use fat as a fuel. No other organs can actually use fat as a fuel, but the brain can. Like the brain can, when you're in sort of ketosis, which is where you're low in carbohydrates, when you're in ketosis, your brain can actually use those ketones as a fuel source. Well, that's a defense mechanism to keep us alive. Like if you're dying from starvation,
Right.
and this is not what we're talking about today, but if you're dying from starvation, your brain will survive longer than the rest of the body, which it needs to, right? No brain, it doesn't matter if your heart's surviving, it can't be controlled.
Right. The brain's the most important organ,
right? So
arguably.
that's a sparing, that's a life-sparing sort of thing. But the truth is the brain doesn't function optimally on ketones. It functions optimally on carbohydrates. And so if we have these giant spikes in carbohydrates and then these crashes afterwards, which is what the body does, then that's not great for the brain.
Yeah,
and you get spikes from simple sugars, and you don't get spikes like that from complex carbohydrates.
I oftentimes wonder on causation or correlation when it comes to nutrition and mood, right? Because I like to try to eat healthy and go to the gym and exercise and all the stuff, right? Because I've been able to realize it's a big part of my mental health. Here's what I observe though, especially in early recovery, like in the day treatment phase where people are coming for most of the day, man, they have mood swings, and I'm curious, right? I get in a curious stage, and I'm like, why are they so all over the place, you know? And then I watch what they eat.
Sure.
And they come in with these, 2 and 3 monsters, or 2 and 3, like these energy drinks that got a ton of sugar in
Or
them.
pockets full of candy.
Right.
They're sucking on candy
A couple
the whole
Pop-Tarts.
time. Right.
So they're eating Pop-Tarts, they're eating energy drinks, they're eating, Bear Claws or donuts or Krispy Kreme. And it's like, no wonder.
I'm sorry. Wait. There's nothing wrong with Bear Claws. Okay, you just step back off of that one. There's nothing wrong with Bear Claws.
Sean feels personally
I've had 3 today, so back off.
Well, listen, when your blood sugar drops
John's
again,
about to relapse.
yeah.
Oh wait, he's not never mind.
Yeah, he's one of those magical
guys that
folk.
can do that.
When your blood sugar bottoms out and you fall asleep over there, we'll know why, right? Piping up from the 3 Bear Claws, you're going to be nodding out here in a minute as soon as that insulin in your body kicks in.
What? Say what?
It's bad snoring. Go on. I apologize.
He's asleep over there.
But you know what I mean? So
He
that's
can
one
push
thing.
buttons in his sleep, though. That's the cool
Yeah.
thing.
That dude's he's a machine.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I've noticed. And it's like, okay, is it that, they have that emotional distress and so their body is wanting dopamine and so they're craving these sugary things and these things that are not good for them? Or is it because they're eating these sugary things that are not good for them? They're having these mood swings, irregular blood sugars. They're basically a walking disaster because they can't eat proper nutrition.
So I'm glad you brought that
Or
up.
they
because,
choose not to eat
Because
proper
honestly, I think that you've probably seen some of these. There's studies occasionally in the literature that are just ridiculous, right? Oh, I forgot to do silly seconds. I didn't have one, but here's a silly
Right.
one. You've seen studies probably in the literature, and I definitely have seen them, where they compare the addictiveness of cocaine to the addictiveness of a chocolate chip cookie.
I hate
Right.
those, man.
So ridiculous, right? But there's a point to be made there. There's no way that chocolate chip cookies are as addictive as cocaine. Sorry, but chocolate chip cookies, particularly simple sugars of any kind, not just chocolate chip cookies, cause dopamine spikes in the midbrain. Which again, the things that happen in the brain with addiction are so unbelievably complex. But if you want to boil it all down, it's all boiled down to dopamine release, and we've talked about that multiple times. And the audience kind of knows how we feel about that. But that's the final common pathway of all drugs and alcohol. And so a chocolate chip cookie, a pocket full of candy, a sugary drink, sorry, I just
As you look at your
looked
monstrous-
at my 9,000-ounce Dr. Pepper. All of those things contain high amounts of sugar and release lots of dopamine from your midbrain.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit like what drugs and alcohol do to you.
And the only thing, we got 30 seconds left here, so
Yeah.
we're going to come back to this. But I think the only reason why they make those comparisons if I could find some type of silver lining in those comparisons, is it allows people that have never had a chemical dependency to try to relate or understand in some way. That's the only positive thing I think that comes from those.
Yeah, sure.
There's no way to compare it, though. I do
I'd
not
love
like
to comment on that
comparison.
when we come back. I don't have enough time right now. But
All right, well, join us on episode 126 right after this short little break from High Desert Counseling, one of our sponsors of We Do Recover.
You are listening to We Do Recover with Jared Miller and co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. We'll be right back after this short break with more of We Do Recover with Jared Miller. Brought to you by High Desert Counseling, Rise Up Supplements, and the Hilton Garden Inn.
High Desert Counseling is an adult outpatient substance abuse treatment facility. We offer multiple services including day treatment, morning and evening intensive outpatient services, continuing care, and Prime for Life. What makes us different is our emphasis on gathering all of the information before enrollment. We do this by offering a thorough evaluation by a credentialed professional. Once we have committed to you and you have committed to us, don't worry, insurance will not dictate your treatment. Lastly, the pretzel effect. We are a brief intervention where we connect our clients to community, mental health, and medical professionals to help maintain recovery for life after treatment. At High Desert Counseling, we strive to be the bridge from active addiction to recovery, community, and connection.
We welcome you back to We Do Recover with Jared Miller, co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. Brought to you by High Desert Counseling, Rise Up Supplements, and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. And now with part 2 of our podcast, Jared Miller and Dr. Terry Sellers.
welcome back, everybody. Part 2, episode number 126. We're talking about relapse warning signs. We're going to continue that discussion in just a second. I want you to know that we're good. We're good right now. Jared just changed out his Zen, so he's ready to go.
This guy.
Okay, sorry.
This guy.
Talk about dopamine release.
I put my bear claw away, so now I'm awake for the rest of the
Your
show.
fourth bear claw.
I mean, I didn't eat. I didn't mean I put it. I mean, never mind.
And I have the
By put it away, it will never be found again.
But they're so delicious.
he meant put it away in his belly.
Yeah.
And
I
I'm
know.
properly nicotine leveled.
Yeah.
So the dopamine is flowing.
Okay.
In my midbrain, Doc.
Well, let's talk about the Hilton Garden Inn for
Let's
a
do
second, can
it.
we? Okay, Hilton Garden Inn is the sponsor of our podcast as well, and the second part of this podcast particularly. It's always sunny and bright at the Hilton Garden Inn. If you have never stayed at the Hilton Garden Inn, do yourself a favor and do that if you're traveling through southern Utah. Hilton Garden Inn takes really good care of us. I'm staying there this evening. It should be lovely, and I always love staying there. Great amenities, great pool, great hot tub. Food actually really good, and the staff is so warm and open. They treat me like family, so I love that. But give them a shot at your stay there. Your kids are going to love it. They love the pool. They're going to love the pool. They're going to love the hot tub. They're going to love all the stuff. So,
I just have one thought.
yeah.
We talk about the Hilton Garden Inn. Give them, we say go on Google if you're traveling to southern Utah.
Yeah.
Give them a Google search.
Yep.
If you've stayed at the Hilton Garden Inn in St. George, Utah, and you had a great experience, go on Google and give them a 5-star review.
Yeah. Yeah.
That helps people so much, right? Like, I don't know about you and Melody, but me and Mandy, like, we Google and check out reviews all the time.
Sure.
So oftentimes, like, if we have a bad experience, we're way more likely to leave a negative review. If you've had a good experience, go give them 5 stars.
I think that's true of almost everyone, though, right?
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
Because the people that have bad experiences are more emotionally motivated to put
Yes.
something down. So if you see a bad review or two, I wouldn't get too carried away with it because people have something go wrong and they hate it. But
Go show them some love.
But yeah, do if you have a good experience, and you will. So
Yeah.
all right, let's get back to it. So we were just talking about
The acronym HALT.
halt, and we got to the first H is all we got which is you have a 2H halt. The traditional halt is 1H, but we were talking about the first one, which is hunger, and you made the point that studies like the chocolate chip cookie versus cocaine help people who have never had addiction to sort of relate. But to me, it's like I roll my eyes whenever people who are normies say to me, "Oh man, I'm really craving." So I'm really craving some chocolate ice cream.
I'm really craving
A bear claw. Right. Right.
the overpriced ones at Albertsons. Oh,
Yes.
I don't think anybody in the history of craving diet soda, bear claws, or chocolate chip cookies has ever done a robbery.
Yes. Right. Right.
With the purpose of.
They've never hawked their TV for chocolate ice cream.
Right.
Right. They've never stolen from their neighbors.
And so, yes, you can use our word
Yeah.
craving if you want. However, you don't truly understand what that looks like.
I lied to my wife once that I was getting bear claws. I didn't tell her.
Well, you're an addict.
Okay, all right.
You're an addict now.
I'm a part of the group now.
Yes,
Now you're an addict.
He's
You're
in.
bear claw addict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
no,
going to
I
add that
kind
to
of
the DSM-5.
I kind of just roll my eyes because, but I also hate it when people co-opt words. Like craving wasn't originally designed. That word wasn't made by people who had addiction issues.
Right.
So
We've stole
I
it.
don't like co-opting words, but the cravings that we're talking about are way more intense. Like your brain thinks you're going to die. Like you may be sitting on your hands and sweating, and all you can think about is, well, maybe Sean does this with bear claws. I don't know.
He
But
might.
All you can think about is, where do I get some dope?
Yeah.
So that's an intense craving. Well,
Yeah.
I think we got H covered pretty well.
Yeah, we got
Take
H
good
covered.
care of yourself. Simple sugars aren't great for you. They're simulating dopamine spikes, which is sort of addict-like behavior. But you'll see in early recovery, people that come in, just barely come into treatment centers, man, they'll be just candy.
We are dopamine
Yep,
fiends. Yes.
they're just trying to get some dopamine in their brain.
Yes.
Which at that point, candy's all they got. So, all right, let's move on. Do
Okay,
you want to talk about?
last piece before we
Okay,
move on from
yeah.
our first H?
Yeah.
Again, we're talking about the type of hunger that is tied into the emotional piece.
Mm-hmm.
If you can recognize that you are either A, overly hungry, or B, you do not have much of an appetite, that might be deeper than just your blood sugar, 3 square meals a day. So take a look at that. Be curious about it. Don't judge yourself, but be curious, look into that.
That's
good
a
place to start.
great point.
Yeah.
Your motivation for eating is critical.
Yeah.
If you're
so.
eating for your health, because you're supposed to have a few small meals in the day, versus you're eating to comfort yourself.
Yep.
Like if you're eating emotionally of any sort of emotion, but a lot of people eat for comfort or starve themselves for control. Those are bad motivations for why you're eating in the first place.
Which is why it makes the top of the list for relapse warning signs, right?
Yep.
Let's move to our second.
What's this? But are we going to move to A or are we going to do the second H?
We're going to do my second H because it's a little taboo.
All right.
I feel like people don't
Halt.
talk about it enough.
Okay.
And I'm going to be the guy that talks about it.
Oh my god!
Because I like to be a little
you
extra,
always get on me whenever I mention testicles but here he goes. Here's his
Our
second H.
second H, number
rhymes
2.
with corny.
Horny.
Oh, what?
Yes. Hungry, horny. Now, this goes back to the point of the dopamine in the brain. It's very important for us through all of these acronyms, HHALT, to recognize when we're just off, when we don't feel right, when we've been, we haven't had that some type of pleasure or some type of dopamine, right?
Sure.
And so some of the things that are natural dopamine releasers that will help satisfy that urge and avoid that relapse is making sure that you're eating right, making sure that you're not, trying to go long periods of time in abstinence from, how do I put this tastefully? Intimacy pleasures, right?
Okay.
Because it puts you at a higher risk.
That was tasteful.
Again, I'm not trying to be like gross and inappropriate, but if you're walking, you know what I mean? If you haven't had some type of pleasure dopamine release experience, you are at a higher risk because typically that leads to irritability. It leads to, right, putting you in kind of a dark place. I don't think anybody in the history of intimacy has ever rolled over and went, well, I just feel like crap now. No.
Not usually.
Right? Because it releases the dopamine. So the second H in halt for me is horny.
Unless you just had sex while you were high or drunk.
Okay.
and then realize in the morning that that was someone you probably shouldn't have had sex with, right?
Right.
That's the only time someone ever rolls over and says, "Oh, that was terrible."
Yeah, and there's other ways of
That
satisfying
guilt.
that besides sleeping with random people and being unhealthy.
Well, so that again, it goes back to me on this topic. It goes back to me for motivation, right?
Yeah, intention.
Are you
Yes.
wanting to be intimate with this person because you feel something for this person, or are you randomly running around and just trying to have sex with anything that moves?
Yeah.
Like the motivation behind it. And listen, you know me, I'm a pretty solid, staunch Mormon dude, right?
Yeah.
I don't have
You're
sex
pretty vanilla.
outside my marriage and that all that stuff. But
You may be a little vanilla bean.
I'm
You know, you got a
vanilla.
little
I'm vanilla
bean in
bean.
there. Yeah, you're vanilla bean, dude.
Don't comment on my bean like that.
Okay.
sorry.
Sean's over there shaking his head.
He's scratching his
All
head and wondering
Either
why.
I'm going to say something disapproving, or I'm going to push you guys over the edge with a completely inappropriate comment. So
we'll take
figure out
either.
which road you're on, and I'm going to go there.
We'll take either.
Okay,
Yeah.
Evan.
So I think motivation is really
Yeah.
key. It's the same thing. It's the same thing as it is with the hunger thing. Why are you eating, and why are you being intimate with someone?
And for me, it's awareness.
And I don't
It's
care about
self-awareness. It's being able to recognize, hey, I'm in a crap mood. I'm in a dark place. I need to seek out some type of natural dopamine release. You know what I mean? Like within responsibility and value system.
Yeah.
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 Should we move on to the A?
Yeah, for sure.
Let's move on to the A.
Yeah.
What's the A?
I don't know. Angry? Am
Angry.
I ticked off?
Yes.
Yeah, I am.
Angry. Angry is a relapse warning sign in our acronym HALT. So, why anger, Doc?
Well, what do we get angry about? I think because anger is a secondary emotion, right? And anger can be a fairly dangerous emotion, right? Because when we're angry, we're doing one of several things, but one of the things we're doing is putting ourselves as a victim, like, oh, somebody else did something to me.
Yep.
Somebody else did something that ruined my life or that harmed me in some way. And anger, we're looking outside of ourselves and starting to point the finger
Which leads
at
to
other people,
resentments.
which leads to, resentments.
I was on Todd Sylvester's podcast, and he said something that I absolutely loved. He said, resentment breeds rebellion.
Interesting. Yeah.
So if you're feeling angry, if you're feeling resentful towards people, you're going to want to go against the grain. You're going to want to swim upstream. You're going to want to do something to show them. How many times do we see this? And I've been guilty of it myself. So I say we, right? Because I'm not judging people. I'm in this pool. I'll show you, Doc. I'm pissed off about something you do. I'll hurt me, right? I'm angry at you, so I'm going to go get loaded. Mm-hmm. Because I'm going to show you how much you hurt me.
Anger is for sure an uncomfortable emotion.
Yeah.
Nobody really loves it. Some of us actually pretend like we thrive on it, right? But the truth is nobody's brain really likes anger. It's a very harmful emotion.
And it's a destructive one, and that's why it makes the list on HALT, the acronym HALT.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
Let's move. I'm trying to move us through some of these quickly because I know you got some really good stuff.
No, we're good, but
Lonely.
oh no.
The L in HALT, lonely.
Yeah, so that ties into your second H, right?
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Ties into horny.
yeah, it does a little bit but loneliness is a much deeper emotion. A lot more sort of human emotion than horny is. Like horny is a midbrain emotion, frankly.
Yes.
It's a midbrain drive to
Pleasure-seeking emotion.
reproduce,
Yes.
right? And there are creatures that are not human that are horny,
Sure.
right? Like every creature in nature.
Just trying to reproduce. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I also think it ties into anger too, because like you said, anger is a secondary emotion. Most of the time when people are angry, it's because they're deep down, they're sad or they're hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you're lonely combined with that, right? Like craving that connection, I'm going to say it. What's his name? He did the speech.
Johann Hari?
Johann Hari. Here we go. The opposite of addiction is connection, right? So loneliness, in which it's true. I just don't love everything about that speech. I won't get into it. I do think there are chemical hooks in heroin, and that's where I disagree. But
Right.
But
There's
I do agree with
absolutely
him on the
chemical
point.
in heroin.
I do agree with him on the point. The opposite of addiction is connection, and that speaks to the lonely piece. You are at increased risk of relapse if you don't have connection, if you're lonely, if you're isolating.
Okay, so it's interesting that you brought up isolation, because that's the place my brain goes, right? We sometimes create our own loneliness by isolating, right? If we and I think it would be important to talk about for just a minute or two, like when you're feeling like that, what can we do about that feeling of loneliness, right? So what you can do about it is, Johan Hari, you can do connection.
Yeah.
How do we do connection? How do we get out of loneliness? Because we all feel lonely sometimes. We've all felt lonely occasionally in a crowded room.
Absolutely.
You can feel lonely.
I see it every day.
But why? Why do people feel lonely in a crowded room?
I think it's because in their minds, they think nobody will understand me. Nobody's been through what I've been through. If they knew the things that I've done or the things I've been through, they would judge me. It's a defense mechanism, which the brain believes, and it distances them from other human beings. It distances them from.
I think that's spot on. I do. I think that's great. We create our own loneliness by looking at other people and seeing the differences between us and them rather than the similarities. And I've told this story before, but when I went to treatment, right, I'm sitting in group, and I was at the time a quite busy obstetrician who thought I was all that, right? And to my left is a plumber. To my right is a Native American dude who worked for the Division of Wildlife Resources, and his job was it's interesting, they have these stun bombs or something they throw in rivers, and it stuns all the fish, and they float to the top, and then they count them to see sort of how the river is stocked with fish and stuff.
I've always wondered how they got those
That's
sentences.
how they do that. This guy sat right to my right. So this guy's the Native American dude's an alcoholic. The plumber is a meth addict, and then the guy over here is a dude that does like hair restoration plugs, and he's like 4'10" and
Heck yeah.
a little obnoxious. And I'm sitting there in this group, and I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm not like these guys. I'm not a plumber. I'm not a Native American dude that blows up fish. I'm not a hair plug restoration dude. And I started seeing all the differences, and it's like, yeah, I don't belong in this group.
I got nothing in common with you people.
And then you people's a really critical term.
Have you ever sat
right?
in a group and had somebody say the word you people?
Yes, I have.
So fun.
Yeah, it's usually a family member, right? But yeah, that'll
sometimes it's other clients.
That'll fit the hair. Yeah, for sure.
Typically alcoholics in a room full of people that have other chemical.
Oh, for sure.
And they think that somehow they're different because it's socially acceptable.
Right.
And they drop the word you people.
Yeah.
And everybody,
the hair
you
on
just
the back
watch.
Of your neck stands up
Everybody's like, what did they just say?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't until I looked at, when I stopped for just a second, I'm not here because I'm a doctor, and he's not here because he's a plumber. We're here because we have substances, and the substances are different, but they do the same thing in the brain.
Yep.
And we're all here for the same reason. And then I started to connect with the group. And those are some people, the people I went to treatment with, like, hold a spot right here in my heart now.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're me with a different job.
Yeah.
That's all it was. And so when we start pointing out differences or pointing out our uniqueness, or we create our own loneliness.
So I got to share something real quick. I got a couple thoughts here. I'm glad that you said that, Doc, because a lot of people don't know this. I don't talk about this a lot, but I actually see private patients through Dr. Evans's Desert Sands Clinic that come in for ketamine treatments for depression. And when they have a SUD disorder, right, when they're struggling with some type of substance abuse, he'll bring me in, and it's a cash pay. And so it's a private client.
Sweet.
And I don't want to get into particulars, but most of these people have a professional license, and they don't want to go the route of a quote unquote public treatment center, right? Because they're not real familiar maybe with HIPAA or whatever the circumstances are.
Right.
One of the hardest things for me to do with those clients is exactly what you're talking about.
With those people? With you people?
Yeah, right? With those private pay clients, the ones that don't want to do the group setting, the ones that are worried about going to an AA meeting or an NA meeting or a Dharma meeting or a smart recovery meeting or whatever it is, right? Is they're lacking that two things typically. They're lacking the recovery companionship, and they're lacking to be able to identify that they're not really that special,
Yeah.
that their problems really aren't that unique,
Right.
that there are people out there that are going through similar or have been through similar things that they're going through. And so to overcome that group belief of like that you get from group, right? That's the hardest thing, man.
There's nobody out there like me.
Lonely.
There's
Leads to
nobody out
loneliness.
there like me. We all have thought that. I remember feeling that when I first went to treatment. Like, I'm not going to, so I was delivering babies in Provo, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to treatment in Provo. I'm going to Salt Lake, where maybe way less people could know me. I don't want anybody to know, like,
You were that guy.
I was, for sure I was that guy, right?
And at the end of the day, we're all just human beings.
Right. I
having
sat
a
down
human
in that
experience.
group and I was that guy because I got this guy on my right who's
Sure.
not like me and this guy on my left who's not like me. I'm that guy. And I wanted to remain anonymous. There's no one in my life today of any importance to me at all that doesn't know that I'm in recovery.
Yeah.
Right. So you get over that sort of terminal uniqueness, hopefully, but you also get over the sort of embarrassment of you put a little time behind you and all of a sudden it's not embarrassing. It's a little bit more of I'm kind of proud of the fact that I've been sober for almost 21 years.
I can remember the first time I said to a sponsor, I shared something super deep with them, and it's not about me, it's about the point of the story, so I'll get to it. I got done sharing this intimate piece that I hadn't shared with anybody with this guy, right? And the whole time he's just stone cold, and I'm like, you know, in my head, like, what's this guy's? He's gonna fire me. He's not gonna want to work with me. He's not gonna answer my calls now. And he looks me dead in the eyes and he says, "There are billions of people in this world. Do you think you're the only person that's ever done that?"
Yeah.
And in that moment, I realized it. Right? Like, I'm really not that unique. Like, I can step out of loneliness and stop holding this back because I'm so afraid.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Let's move on to the last one.
We
And
got
Halt,
a T.
What's the last one? T.
We got a T for Terry.
Or tired.
Yep, that's what I am.
Okay, tired. Tired Terry.
Yep.
All right, what comes to mind when you... why does this make our list of relapse warning signs?
First of all, I'd like to be tired more than once. I'd like to be retired, but I'm not yet. So
You're rehired instead?
I'm still working.
Dude, we got dad jokes for days on
We got
this
dad jokes
podcast.
for months, for sure. Okay, so tired. Well, first of all, when you're tired, whether that's an actual physical fatigue or an emotional fatigue, right? Then your brain's capacity to deal with problems is lessened, right? And so if you have you're tired and you have incoming stressors, like stay up for a couple of days and tell me how great your brain's functioning at the end of that day too, because I've
Right.
done it before, right? Delivering babies. My brain's not functioning very well at the end of that second day. It's just not at all. So rest is optimal for the brain. It needs it. That's why we do it. It needs it to function normally and that sort of stuff. Now, I would also counter that being tired is maybe a little bit less of a trigger, although, again, your brain's not functioning normally, but a little bit less of a trigger to people whose drug of choice is downers. But the people whose drug of choice is uppers, tired is a gigantic trigger.
Because their brain goes, we know how to fix this.
Yeah, I can fix this right now. I can fix this in 5 minutes, 2 minutes,
Yeah.
20 seconds. Like
Right.
you can make that go away with stimulants really quickly and easily. And so for those that are listening that might not be familiar with drugs, I would suspect a majority of our audience is, but for those that aren't, the stimulants are methamphetamine,
Oh, yeah. Cocaine, amphetamine, caffeine,
Adderall,
nicotine.
caffeine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those things are all uppers.
My mind goes to, when I think of tired, it goes back to the hungry one, right? Again, now on that same depression survey that I have my clients fill out every week to kind of give me an idea of where they're at, it asks about sleep patterns. Do you have difficulty falling asleep? Do you have difficulty staying asleep? Do you have difficulty waking up at different periods of time? You get the idea. Because that's tied into mental health. That's tied into distress tolerance. That's tied into emotional regulation. That's tied into all the things that have to do with the reason why you want to use in the first place. Typically, we don't wake up one day and go, you know what, I want to become an alcoholic.
Right.
It's all the things that stack up in our life. It's us not being able to shut our brains off. Here's the big stigma thing that I want to get to. people think addicts are these low life people that are just dumb and worthless and right. Like maybe I'm being extreme here, probably because I'm a
But
little
some people
animated.
have that judgment
But that
of
is
people with addiction issues.
That's a general kind of census, I feel like, from people that don't understand it. Let me tell you something. Addicts are some of the most highly intelligent, highly charismatic, aka manipulator, people you will ever meet in your whole life. In fact, so intelligent and so charismatic, they've found a way to self-medicate. But the problem is they don't
to get away with self-medicating and doing things that are illegal to get the drugs of choice for years.
Right. And so therefore it ties into the mental health thing. I love you guys all out there, right? Like we have some of the best people that struggle with this thing. Be aware of relapse warning signs.
Yep.
That finishes up HALT.
Yep. We're about out of time. We got a minute left.
We're going to have to do a part 2 of this.
We could, but so I read this article from Hazelden on 37 relapse warning signs, and I know we don't have time to get to any of them, but I did want to mention one of the things that they said was when you find yourself seeking out or considering taking sleep medications, which is really interesting because what that really means is you're not sleeping well, and that goes right back to HALT, right? It goes right back to tired.
Yep.
If you find yourself considering unnatural ways to solve your sleep problems, that might be a relapse warning sign.
Absolutely.
So keep that in mind. Well, we got seconds left in this episode.
I love it.
I'm glad I'm in studio.
Dude, are you going to stay healthy on me?
Yeah, I'm probably going to die someday, but it ain't going to be this day.
Don't go kicking the bucket on me.
Not going to
man.
be today. I'm going to make it for another week.
I have a suggestion for you.
Yeah. Get some sleep.
Get some sleep and some proper nutrition. And maybe instead of the 74,000 ounces of Dr. Pepper over there, some liquid IV, especially if you're out on the golf course.
I'm working on
100
it.
degree heat.
Try Bear Claw.
I'm working on that.
Bear Claw.
Bear Claw.
Try Bear Claw.
All right, folks, it's been a good one. 126 is officially in the books. We will see you in a couple weeks from now because Sean Denman has a crazy schedule.
We're out.
Thank you for joining us today on We Do Recover with Jared Miller.
Help us spread our message of hope. Like, comment, and share.
If you have any topics or ideas for future shows, please share that on our Facebook page.
That Facebook page is We Do Recover with Jared Miller. If you or a loved one needs help, please reach out to us. Again, thank you for listening.
Brought to you by High Desert Counseling, Rise Up Supplements, and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of its sponsors. This has been a production from A Podcast Studio.